There was lipstick on the inside of his collar. Not mine. I found it before I found her. She came home humming. That's what did it. Not guilt, not panic, not silence. Humming. Like she'd been wrapped in sunlight all day while I sat on the floor of our laundry room, staring at a shirt that wasn't even mine, trying to convince myself that the red mark was ketchup. But it wasn't ketchup. I checked. Twice. She walked past me without noticing, tossed her keys into the bowl, kicked off her shoes like it was any other Tuesday, and said, "We should get that leak in the bathroom checked. It's dripping again." I didn't respond. I just held up the shirt. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't even pretend to be confused. Instead, she tilted her head and said, "Are you doing my laundry now?" Like that was the issue. And that's when I knew. I knew it had been going on for a while. Long enough that she wasn't afraid anymore. Long enough that he felt comfortable enough to leave his shirt behind in our house. Long enough that she had stopped seeing me as a threat. I asked one question. Just one. "Did you ever take it off for me?" Her face didn't change, but her hands clenched. That was enough. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't say another word. I walked into the kitchen, poured the wine she liked into the glass she never let me touch, and sat down in her chair by the window. She said, "You're being dramatic." I said nothing. She said, "If you're going to act like this, either step aside or walk away." I didn't even glance at her. I just stared at the glass and watched the lipstick mark fade into the fabric. She hated silence. Always did. Used to say it, felt like a punishment. That's ironic now, considering how she weaponized words like scalpels. But that night, I didn't give her the satisfaction of a fight. I just sat there in her chair. Yes, her chair, the one she insisted was better for her back and wouldn't let me near, and stared through the wine glass like it might show me something I missed. A warning. A memory. A version of us that still had a pulse. She paced behind me for a while. Not frantic, just irritated. Like I had ruined the rhythm of her evening. Like I had knocked over a vase she wasn't done admiring. "You're overreacting," she said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice even though I wasn't looking at her. "It's a shirt. Laundry. You've never cared before." That's when I finally spoke. One word. "Whose?" She paused. Just a half second too long. Long enough to tell me everything. "You really want to do this?" she asked. "Now." I didn't answer. I just let her drown in the silence she always feared. Let her feel what I'd been living with for months. The quiet between us, so loud it rang in my ears. Then she laughed. Laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. More like disappointed amusement. Like I was too dumb to figure it out sooner, and now I'd ruined her patience. She walked over, stood across from me, and crossed her arms. "Fine," she said. "You want the truth?" He stayed over. He was drunk. I told him to sleep it off. He didn't mean to leave that shirt. And no, before you ask, I didn't sleep with him that night. That night. Not never. Just that night. And that phrasing, that precise surgical slip, told me more than any confession ever could. I finally turned my head and looked at her. Just for a second. Her eyes narrowed like she was expecting a slap of rage, but I didn't give her that either. "Do you love him?" I asked quietly. Another pause. Not as long this time, but not short enough to feel safe. "I don't know," she said. "I just know I don't feel small when I'm with him." That one cut deeper than anything else. I don't feel small. As if I'd made her feel like less. As if my quiet loyalty and boring predictability had shrunk her down into a version of herself she wanted to escape. And maybe she was right. Maybe I'd built a life of routines and coffee mugs and unspoken disappointments, and she needed chaos to feel alive again. But what she never understood, what she still doesn't, is that I never tried to make her small. I was just too busy trying not to disappear. She left me sitting there in the chair as if her confession was a sigh she could float away from. The door to the hallway creaked slightly as she disappeared upstairs, humming again, though this time the tune sounded sharper, more forced. She wanted control back. That was her instinct. Always fix the optics, never the wound. I didn't move. Even after the wine grew warm in my hand, even after the silence thickened into something you could slice with a key, I just sat there in the chair she swore wasn't built for my posture, wondering how long I'd been shrinking without noticing. Not in height or weight or space, but in presence, in importance. She'd been slipping him into our home one thread at a time. I started seeing it. Little things, like how her favorite tea moved to a different shelf, or how my shaving kit was moved slightly every week. like someone else had been using the mirror. I even remembered that strange sandal I found under the couch 2 months ago, the one she said belonged to her yoga friend, Brinley. There is no Brinley. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there beside her while she dozed off in that silk robe I gave her 3 anniversaries ago, back when anniversaries meant anything. I listened to her breathe, wondering how many lies were carried out on the same breath she used to say goodnight to me. And around 3:30 a.m., I got up. I opened the hallway closet and pulled out the old duffel bag I used to take on camping trips with my dad, the one that still smelled like pine and cheap detergent. I didn't pack anything obvious. Not clothes. Not shoes. No toothbrush. I didn't want her to see it missing. I packed documents. Originals. My birth certificate, the deed, a flash drive she didn't know existed, and something else. The spare phone. I bought it a year ago, not out of paranoia, but because I thought I might start freelancing and wanted a work line. I never did, but I kept the number, and I kept it charged. That night, it became my lifeline. I wasn't planning revenge. I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew that something in me had shifted. This wasn't going to be one of those stories where the guy leaves quietly, disappears with dignity, and posts about closure on a dusty subreddit. I wanted to see what she looked like when she felt small. And for that, I needed to wait. Not days. Weeks. Let her think she won. Let her hum. Let her wear that robe like nothing's broken. Let her bring him back when she thinks I've made peace with it. Let her forget the version of me that listens. Because the next part of this story, she writes it herself, without knowing it. 3 days after I found the shirt, she made pancakes. She never makes pancakes. She hates carbs. Swears they make her feel heavy, like the weight of the flour somehow glues itself to her confidence. But that morning, she had blueberries in the batter and syrup on the table before I even stepped into the kitchen. She kissed my cheek and said, "I thought we could start fresh." That's what she called it. A fresh start. Like you can Clorox betrayal and serve it on a breakfast plate. Like syrup drowns out lipstick on another man's collar. I sat. I ate. I chewed slowly and let the silence between us pretend to be forgiveness. But inside, I was tracking every word, every blink, every overacted smile. She was trying to cover a crime scene with a tablecloth. And the thing about Delina is she's terrible at guilt. She doesn't hide it. She performs it. And actors get lazy when they think the audience has stopped watching. That night, she stayed downstairs later than usual. Said she was reading. I knew that wasn't true because I could hear the subtle difference in her voice when she was alone versus when she was pretending to be. I stayed upstairs. Quiet. She didn't know I'd fixed the old air duct in the guest room. Sealed it just enough to stop the cold draft, but not enough to block sound. I sat in that room, lights off, door cracked, and listened. The muffled rhythm of her voice wasn't reading. It was whispering. Soft laughs. Pauses that could only mean he was speaking on the other end. And then I heard it. The nickname. "Hey, Ash." I froze. Not because of the name, but because of the way she said it. I'd heard that tone once before. A long time ago, when we first met, when she still thought I was interesting enough to lean toward during a conversation. It wasn't the name that hurt. It was the sound of her giving it weight. Ash. Whoever he wasn't new. He was layered in. Deep. This wasn't an affair sparked by boredom. It was carefully planted and grown while I was busy tightening cabinet hinges and refilling her favorite bath salts. I should have confronted her. Kicked the door open. Asked who Ash was. Asked how long. Asked why she didn't even try to lie better. But I didn't. Because something in me wanted to see how far she'd go if I never stopped her. The next night, she said she was going out with friends. A girls' night. Carrie's having a meltdown, she explained. Needs a distraction. I smiled. Of course. She didn't know I had already checked Carrie's Instagram. She was at her sister's in Oregon. Family trip. Posted 6 hours earlier from a cabin. So I followed her. Not to the bar. Not to some hotel. Not even to his place. She went to our spot. That little overlook above Chesterfield Hill. The one we used to go to when we were broke and bored and wanted to feel like the world was ours for a minute. She went there with him. And when I parked 3 spaces back and saw their silhouettes through my windshield, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I wrote something. 1 sentence. I folded it, sealed it, and left it in her glove compartment the next morning. She wouldn't find it yet. Not until later. But I wanted her to carry it unknowingly. The sentence? You told him our story. And I wasn't wrong. Because the way she looked at him? That was mine. Once. She didn't say anything the morning she found the note. I was pretending to sleep, breathing slow, one arm draped outside the blanket like I always do. I felt the mattress shift, just slightly, that careful lean she always did when trying to reach the nightstand drawer without waking me. I heard the soft click of the drawer sliding open, then the paper crinkle. She thought it was private. It wasn't. 38 seconds of silence. I counted every one of them. She got up, walked to the bathroom. The sink didn't turn on. She just stood there, motionless. And I knew, at that exact moment, she was staring at herself in the mirror, wondering if I'd seen it all, wondering what else I knew, wondering when I stopped being asleep and started watching. She didn't ask. She didn't dare. That day, everything changed. Not on the surface, no tears, no slamming doors. She still made her green juice. Still watered the plant she named after her grandmother. Still texted with her thumb slightly curled like it was broken. But her eyes, they kept drifting toward me, like she expected me to vanish. But I didn't. I stayed. Quiet. Kind. Even offered to pick up dinner. "Ty," I said, "you still like the green curry?" She blinked like I'd said something from a dream. Yeah, that sounds good." When I returned, she was on the phone, probably him. But she hung up the moment she saw my headlights flash through the window. I pretended not to notice. I even smiled. Over the next few days, she grew nicer. Visibly, almost desperately nicer. She complimented my shirts. Said she liked my beard longer. Even laughed, too loud, at a joke I didn't finish telling. That's how I knew the fear had set in. Not the fear of me. The fear of not knowing what I'd do. And I played it perfectly. I didn't accuse her. I didn't bring up the note. I didn't even touch her phone, though I could have. She started leaving it face down, which told me enough. She had begun to rewrite the script in her head, imagining outcomes and consequences, trying to predict which version of me she'd get next. That's what made her unravel. Not knowing. She had always been in control. Of the house. Of our social life. Of how her story was told. She used to say, "Narrative is everything." And she was right. So I let her live in a narrative where the walls had ears, and every doorknob turned a little too quietly. The next week, I booked a hotel under a different name. Not because I needed to leave, but because I needed a place to think and plan. That room wasn't far. Just 6 miles away. Far enough to be invisible, close enough to return whenever I wanted. I filled it slowly with things I cared about. My dad's old journals, the record player she always called ugly, the framed photo of me and my brother when we were still allowed to be kids. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't post online. No digital fingerprints. But each night, when she thought I was working late, I was there, building something separate, something safe, something mine. And all the while, she kept asking, in smaller and smaller ways, if everything was okay. You know how people ask that when they know it isn't? She didn't want answers. She just wanted to hear the lie said gently. So I gave it to her. Yeah, I'd say, we're okay. But we weren't. We were a house filling with water. And only one of us had learned how to hold their breath. It was never about catching her. I already had what I needed. What mattered wasn't proof. What mattered was how she behaved when she thought she was still invisible. That's where truth lives. In shadows. Not in confessions. I didn't install cameras. I didn't plant trackers or hack her phone. All I did was place a single voice recorder under the wooden slat of the hallway shelf. That shelf she always leaned on when she spoke on the phone. The one by the stairs, near the front window where the light hit her just right. She didn't know it squeaked when pressure was applied to the back right corner. But I did. So one afternoon while she was out, probably with him, I slid the device inside, tested the pickup range, checked the battery, and pressed record. Then I left it there. For days. I didn't rush to listen. I let it collect dust. Collect secrets. It wasn't until a Wednesday evening, one where she claimed she was going to get her nails fixed, that I sat in my hotel room with the recorder in my hand, headphones in, wine uncorked. The first 10 minutes were nothing. Footsteps. A Spotify playlist. 2 muted phone calls. One was work-related. But then, hour 2. A voice I'd never heard before, at least not that clearly. Ash. He wasn't poetic. He wasn't deep. He wasn't even charming. He sounded bored. Restless. The kind of man who ruins lives without realizing their lives at all. And then I heard her voice. Laughing. Soft. Like melted sugar. She said something I will never forget. He still thinks we're fixable. Can you believe that? It's kind of sweet. In a pathetic way. She called me sweet. She called me pathetic. In the same breath. Ash grunted. Maybe he's into it. She giggled. Maybe, she said. Or maybe he just doesn't know how to leave. Some men stay even after you burn the map. I took a long sip of wine, paused the recording, stared at my reflection in the dark window across from me, and something settled inside my chest. Not anger, not pain. Just confirmation. She didn't cheat because she was lost. She cheated because she was convinced I'd stay. Because I'd made it easy. She never feared the consequences because I never made her imagine any. But now she would. Not through rage. Not through violence. Not through some dramatic confrontation where I throw things or scream names into the void. No, I would disappear. Intentionally. Strategically. Emotionally first, physically next. I would let her feel what it's like to look across a room and see a stranger in my place. And it started the next morning. She came downstairs wearing my t-shirt, an old one, soft from time, from history. She did that sometimes when she wanted to play innocent. Nostalgic. As if fabric could erase betrayal. She said, "Can I make you breakfast?" I looked at her and smiled. "No, thanks. I'm not hungry anymore." Her brow furrowed, but she didn't push. She never did when she sensed I wasn't reacting the way I used to. That day, I started removing myself in pieces. One item off the bookshelf. One drawer left empty. One evening gone without notice. One laugh not shared. And every day she noticed something. And every day she said nothing. Because now she was afraid to ask. She was afraid of what I'd say. Because deep down she knew. This time, I wasn't bluffing. The first time it cracked publicly was at her friend Jenna's birthday dinner. 10 people around a long, rustic table at a trendy Italian place she loved, but always claimed was too loud for real conversation. Delina wore that green wrap dress, the one she once said made her feel dangerous, back when that word was flirtation and not foreshadowing. Her lipstick matched her wine. She looked perfect. Too perfect. We hadn't spoken the entire drive there. She'd talked to herself in the mirror before we left, whispered things under her breath like mantras, like she was rehearsing a character. I let her. Jenna greeted us with hugs. She hugged Delina a beat longer. Maybe she knew. Or maybe she always had. Dinner started light. Laughter, clinking glasses, a toast about choosing joy. Everyone played their roles. Delina touched my knee once under the table. I didn't move. I didn't look at her. I just sipped my drink and nodded at whatever story was being told across the plates. Then Jenna asked how things were going with us. It wasn't malicious, just a friend checking in. But Delina's fork froze midair. Just for a second. That pause again. That telling pause. She laughed and said, "We're good. Just busy, you know how it is." I let the silence stretch a little longer than polite. Then I smiled and said, "We've never been clearer." That was all. But the table shifted. People felt it. They always do. It's not about what's said. It's about the temperature in the room. About how quickly someone changes the subject. How the wine gets poured a little faster. Jenna gave me a look, one I pretended not to catch. Concerned. Curious. Delina didn't touch me again for the rest of the meal. Later that week, we were invited to a gallery opening. One of Ash's projects. I said yes before she could make an excuse for me. I wore a navy shirt she hated. Said it made me look distant. That night, distance was the point. She introduced me to people with a strained smile. Called me the husband. Not my husband. Ash never approached, but I saw him. Skinny. Smug. The kind of man who looks like he thinks he's invisible. I watched him notice me. Watched his mouth tense just enough. I smiled. He didn't. When Delina stepped away to get drinks, I walked over. Slow. Calm. I stood beside him and said, "She liked this gallery more when it was ours." He looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. I didn't give him time to respond. I turned to walk away, then paused. "Don't worry. I'm not the type to make a scene." Then I smiled again, wider this time, and added, "But I do believe in letting the truth breathe." He didn't follow me. He didn't even blink. But I know he felt it. The shift. And so did she. The next morning, she asked if I was still in this. I asked, in what? She blinked. In us. In this marriage. I looked at her the way you look at someone who once knew you but doesn't anymore. I'm still in the house. That's all I said. And that answer haunted her more than anything else could have. Because it meant she was still trapped in the performance. But the audience had stopped clapping. I didn't need to yell. Didn't need revenge. She was unraveling herself now. In front of everyone. And I hadn't even opened my mouth. The night I left, it rained. Not heavy, not dramatic, just enough to smear the porch light into something soft and golden. I stood in the hallway, holding the same duffel bag I had packed weeks earlier, filled not with anger, but with everything I had quietly reclaimed as mine. She was upstairs, getting ready for bed. I heard the water running, the soft clink of her ring against the sink edge, the hum of her voice as she brushed her teeth. She was humming again, as if she'd convinced herself that this version of us could still be salvaged. But I knew it couldn't. And for once, I wasn't leaving out of pain or shame. I wasn't disappearing to make a point. I was walking away because I could. I placed one final thing on the kitchen table before I left, a letter. Not a scream, not a list, just the truth, in handwriting that had steadied over time. You didn't destroy me. You revealed me. I was never weak, just quiet. And now, I'm done whispering. No threats, no guilt, just freedom. I stepped into the rain without an umbrella. Felt it on my skin. Cold, sure, but real. Alive. Every drop felt like permission, like a clean page. My hotel stay turned into an apartment lease. Then a better job. Then new routines, slower mornings, warmer dinners. I didn't rush into anything. Not people, not promises, not explanations. People asked where she was. I just said, gone. No one pressed. Months passed. My chest stopped tightening every time I saw a mustard yellow coat. I no longer flinched at her perfume in public. I could finally walk by Chesterfield Hill and breathe normally. Then one evening, I got a letter. It was from her. No return address. Just one sheet of paper. Handwritten. Carefully folded. You never yelled. That hurt the most. I still don't know how to carry the silence you left. I didn't reply, because I wasn't angry anymore. I was full. Whole. Not healed in a movie-ending way. Healed in the human way, with small victories, messy progress, and no need to be understood by anyone who once made me feel invisible. I built a new life, not to prove her wrong, but to finally live as someone I recognized. And for the first time in a long time, I felt big again.